How fitting it is that we gather in this room in which Elchonon ben Gershon brought nachas to so many, many members of our community, parents, grandparents. We're going to begin with a few parakim of Tehillim. I'd like to call upon a couple of Rabbi Goldenberg's colleagues. I'd first like to ask Rabbi Schwartz to come up.
אשרי האיש אשר לא הולך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב ליצים לא ישב כי אם בשרס אדוני חפצו חסו יגע יומם ולילה והיה כעת שסול על פלגמויים אשר פריו ייתן בעיתו ועליהו לא ייבול וכל אשר יעשה יצליח לא כן הרשעים, כי אם כמות אשר תדפנו רוח, על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט, וחטאים בהדס צדיקים, כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים, ודרך רשעים תאבד.
Rabbi Shenkov.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני מי יגור באוהליך, מי ישכון בהר קודשך, הולך תמים ופועל צדק ודור לבבו, לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה וחרפה לא נשא על קרובו, נבזה בעיניו נמאס, ויסיר אדוני יכבד, נשבע להוריו ולא ימיר, כספו לא נושן בנשך ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם.
Begin with the Espedim. I'd like to call upon Rabbi David Lehrfield, Marad Asra, Young Israel.
How often do we find in yearbooks children going to school, what do you want to do with your life? What's your ambition? And what do children write down? Policeman, fire department, doctor, lawyer, businessman. Do you ever find a child writing down for his life's ambition to be a Malamed? I don't think so. I don't think you'll ever find a child writing in a book when they go to school, my life's ambition is to be a Malamed. Why not? Because somehow Malamdim in our society are not given the realization of what they really are. Yet if we were honest with ourselves, that is what we should write down. If we were honest with ourselves, that is what should be put down. Because believe it or not, when a person is a Malamed, he is really emulating Hashem Yisbarach. And we have a mitzvah in our Torah, V'halachta b'drachav, to go in the ways of Hashem. And what do we say every morning? Baruch Atah Hashem, HaMalamed Torah Le'amo Yisrael. Hashem Yisbarach is the ultimate Malamed. And I think of Rabbi Goldenberg, B'terem etzorcha ba'beten yiraticha. before he was born, Hashem destined this man to be a Melamed, to go in the ways of Hashem Yisbarach. And you know, we say in davening every day, and we say it so glibly and so quickly, V'al nisecha v'niflo secha shebachol eis erev avokav v'tzoroi, and we thank Hashem for all the miracles that happen every day. He was a Baal Mofes. No one could somehow grasp how he did it. How he can take a group of children. We think of them nowadays as little bit animals, wild animals. And take these children and teach them with such skill and such love, and never raising his voice. I tell you, you can take all the courses you want in education and all the courses you want in psychology, and you can become a PhD in the field of education and not do what he did. To take those children year after year and make them understand what it means to be a Yid. What a talent and what a gift. And you know, we say in davening every day the same thing. V'sein b'libeinu bino lahavin lahaskil lishmoa lilmod lalamed Ribbono shel olam, give us the ability lahavin lahaskil, to understand, lilmod lalamed. And you know, those last two words are the most difficult. I challenge anybody to go into a room of 25 children and hold them spellbound and teach them the word of Hashem Yisbarach. You think it's easy? It's almost impossible. Yet he was a Baal Mofes. Somehow, B'tserem el tzorcha ba'betna yeraticha. Somehow before he was born, Hashem gave him this unusual talent and his usual skill. Stand in awe of this man. I am so makar tov to him, like all of us are makar tov to him. He taught my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Every one of us in this room have hakaras hatov. He was a gaon. He was a genius. And once again, if you think it's easy, I defy anyone with all the knowledge they have and all the skills they have to go into a room, 25, 35 children, year after year, hold them spellbound, never raise your voice, and yet teach them the Torahs of Hashem. You know, this Shabbos, we are finishing the Sidros of Matos and Maseh. The Bnei Yisrael are going in the Midbar for 40 years. And our Torah shows every place they go and every place they went. You and I know where Rabbi Goldenberg's final destination is. I have no doubt at all. You and I know. And you and I know, as Hashem Yisbarach led the Klal Yisrael in the Midbar for 40 years, from place to place, he laid the foundation for thousands of Jewish children, thousands, teaching for 30 years. Ben Shloshim Lakoach, when you are 30 years old, you have strength. How many children has he given the strength to learn? And what these children have learned is with them for 120 years. He set the foundation. We have such a hakaras hatov to him. Now ask yourself the question, what is us for to do? What can we do? To find a replacement for him is almost an impossibility. Almost. I can't think of anyone who had his talent. Almost. But I will tell you one thing. He was the ultimate Melamed. He went b'derech Hashem as Hashem is the ultimate Melamed. We have an achrayus. We have a responsibility. Every one of us who is a parent or a grandparent should start thinking, how can I teach my children? How can I give to them something that Rabbi Goldenberg would have given to them had he been with us? That's our responsibility. And we can do it. And we should do it. And we should think about it. And we should ruminate about it. And we should say to ourselves, how can we somehow carry on the Malachas HaKodesh that he did? We in this Kehillah have been gebenched by Hashem Yisbarach. Mamish gebenched. All of us who have had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who have been under his, shall we say, brightness, have been gebenched. We are mispal to Hashem Yisbarach that he benches further. And to the children, I hope and I know that you realize the godless of your father. I hope you realize in Tova, the Eshes Chayil, who was the inspiration behind him. I am sure you realize, and you have a community of thousands of people who for their entire lifetime will be saying Modi Banachnu Lok to Hashem, for Hashem giving us Rabbi Goldenberg.
Rabbi Ephraim Elio Shapiro Maradas V'Shari Tefillah.
People are probably very familiar that the Gemara says, and I quote, Sheshkula misoson shel tzadikim kisreifas beis Elchonon. When a Rebbe who's a tzaddik is nifter, it's like losing the Beis Hamikdash again. I think we all know that. Most of us probably don't know that the Medrash in Eicha says it differently. Shesilukan shel tzadikim kosher lifnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu yoiser michurban Beis Hamikdash. When a Rebbe who's a tzaddik dies, it's worse than the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed. And the question's obvious. They seem to be at odds with each other. Is it equal to or is it worse than? I don't know that what I'm saying is 100% accurate, but it might be. Maybe when Chazal tell us that losing a Rebbe who's a tzaddik is like losing the Beis Hamikdash is true all year. But during the 3 weeks, when you're approaching Tisha B'Av and the 9 days, and you're already suffering the loss very acutely of the Beis Hamikdash, that's when Chazal say, I want you to know it's not equal to, but it's worse. Silukan shel tzadik lifnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu kosher yoiser misreifas beis Elchonon. All year it's equal to. But when we're already mourning the loss of a Beis Hamikdash, and then the Rebbeinu Shalom takes away a Rebbe who's a tzaddik, it's not equal to, it's worse than. It's very important that you remember Rabbi Goldenberg's Hebrew name, Rabbi Elchonon ben Reb Gershon. My father Zatzal was very makpid that you remember when you're eulogizing the Hebrew name and think of it every few minutes, Rabbi Elchonon ben Reb Gershon. The first thing I want us to realize, if we realize what it means to lose a Beis Hamikdash, is that losing a Rebbe who's a tzaddik approaching the 9 days is worse than Sreifas Beis Elokeinu. As Rabbi Lehrfield just mentioned so eloquently, when a person is a Rebbe who teaches you Aleph Beis, Kriya, and Parsha in a way that no one else can, then it's not like a person just had that Rebbe for a year in first grade and even third grade. I remember hearing from Rav Pam Zatzal that B'Shem Rav Pam, the first grade Rebbe who teaches you the Aleph Beis, who teaches you Toras Emes, literally and figuratively, is your Rebbe for life. Because everything that you learn in the remaining years in middle school and high school and Beis Medrash and Koilel is all based on the nucleus of that Rebbe. So how many thousands of people and their family are walking around with a piece of Rabbi Goldenberg within them? There's no such thing as having a first grade and a third grade Rebbe and then moving on. According to what I just told you from Rav Pam, the truest Rebbe a person has is the one who teaches them Aleph Beis again, who teaches them Kriya, who teaches them Parsha for the first time, because anything that you ever become is based on that foundation. So according to the pshat that we just said, when one speaks about Rabbi Elchonon ben Reb Gershon, it's like losing the foundation. And when you lose your foundation, it's yoiser kosher misreifas beis elikenu. We better get it. There's a famous Gemara that tells you what type of Rebbe you're supposed to look for in life. Im doime harav lemalach Hashem yevakshu Torah mipiu. You want to look for a Rebbe who's like an angel. That's a famous Gemara, Chagiga Tezvav Amud Beis. The type of Rebbe you want in life is one that's doime lemalach, that's an angel. Similar to the way Rabbi Lehrfield just described Rabbi Goldenberg, you get the idea of what angels must look like. Im harav doime lemalach Hashem yevakshu Torah mipiu. That's the ticket of who you want in a Rebbe. The makne, which means the hafla of the Rebbe of the Chassam Sofer, says, I'll tell you what the Gemara really means. When a person in this world is only interested in their own steiging, they're a hoylech. They grow and grow in their avodah because they take care of themselves. But what about the Rebbe who says, I will stop being a hoylech and I'll just be an oimed? You know, malachim are only oimdim. They only stand. They're in one spot. Says the Hamakna, to the Rebbe who says, I'll put aside my own growth for the moment just to stand and care about the Talmud. Im harav doime lemalach. If your Rebbe is like a malach in the sense that he's willing to temporarily forego his being a hoylech, I hope we understand the profundity of what the Makna is saying. And he's willing to sacrifice so much to be an oimed like a malach who's an oimed. That's the Rebbe you want. And by the way, the Makna says, don't worry. Any Rebbe who gets it and says, I'll stop from being a hoylech to be like an angel who's an oimed, the Rebbeinu Shalom says you'll never lose out. You'll steig in your own avodah at other times. I was speaking to a Rebbe in our community today and who said so eloquently, Rabbi Elchonon ben Reb Gershon, our Rabbi Goldenberg, our Malach, gave tens of years as an oimed to care about every child individually, and there was nothing else at that moment. When you give up your life to be an oimed, you're a malach. That's a Rebbe that you want. I would imagine today in Shemayim they will be greeting Rabbi Goldenberg as the greatest mahalach, as someone who, because he stopped to give to the children, they greet him as a mahalach. Someone called me on the way to the Levaya and said, without mentioning his name, earlier in the year, his son was entering first grade. And he had a lot of difficulty with this child. And he told Rabbi Goldenberg, the way that I'm most successful with my child is if I get feedback. If I get feedback how my first grade Yingel is doing, then I can stay on top of it. You think I can get some feedback? That's the way I'll be successful. As we all know, our Malach, Rabbi Goldenberg, was in school sometimes this year very ill and other times not, and there was a substitute. The Rebbe on the way to the Levaya counted his emails because he asked Rabbi Goldenberg, when you can, email and or call. He counted his emails. You know how many school days there are, I'm guessing about 180. He had this year alone from Rabbi Goldenberg 95 different emails. That's besides phone calls, and that's besides telling the substitute when he couldn't be there, make sure you email or call. And then I asked the Rebbe, did he ever miss? There was not a single day this entire year, not one, that Rebbe Elchonon ben Reb Gershon didn't either email, call, or have the substitute do it. People don't do things like that. Angels do. People who are only interested in being a hoylech don't do that. People who are oindim, who stop to care, they do that. You mean as sick as Rabbi Goldenberg was on any given day, he would email or call or make sure the subject... There wasn't one day. I don't mean 5 were missing, 3 were missing, or 1 was missing. Not one. A parent just told me, remember to say how when our child a few years ago, the parent said was in first grade and was having trouble with a particular type of kriya, that the words couldn't be put together quick enough. It bothered Rabbi Goldenberg that this Talmud was behind the others, so he called the parents and said, I need your son's help. You see, there's a new curriculum that either Torah Masorah, the camps in the mountains are trying, and I want to try it as well. So could you bring your son over this many nights and this often so I can work on this new innovative program? He'd be doing me a big favor. Really? And it happens to be the boy went many, many times and successfully was able to piece together the kriya that's normally very difficult. But it wasn't enough for Rabbi Goldenberg to say your son needs help. He said that there's a new system that we're trying, bring him over as if he's doing me a favor. I could tell you in Sharei Tefillah, countless times that I saw Rebbe Elchonon ben Reb Gershon go over to a boy during a break, maybe Shalashudis, or during davening, or after when there was a break, and say, maybe we could learn a little bit together. People don't do that. Angels do that. Im harav doime lemalach Hashem tzivakis yivakish tar mipiyu. That's the angel we had for decades teaching our kinderlach. There are thousands of families who are walking around with a piece of Rabbi Goldenberg within them, and we better remember that. Because the truest Rebbe you have is the one who gives you your nucleus and foundation. The one who teaches you Parsha in the most inimitable style. That's the Malach, the Oimed, that today will be welcomed in Shemayim as the biggest Hoylech of all. You know how many Talmidim would go over on Purim, give Mishloach Monos, and Rabbi Goldenberg would accept it and make the Talmud feel like he was the most special Talmud in the world. And I could tell you personally, Rabbi Goldenberg comes out, sees me with my son, takes a lot of pictures that I thought came out great and I thought was the end of it. Then he comes to me in shul a little while later each time with a blown up picture of me and my son. It happens to be that in our room, that is the single picture that's hanging. Angels do that. People who are our nucleus and foundation do that. And I just want to end with one Maisa that my father heard when he was saying goodbye to the Chazon Ish. If there's anything that anybody says that summarizes Rabbi Elchonon ben Reb Gershon, it's what the Chazon Ish told my father when my father went to say goodbye. Maybe people know the story, but they know it because they have a cousin who read it in a book from a different village. My father heard it from the Chazon Ish. A wealthy man came to Reb Eliezer Telzer, and he told Reb Eliezer Telzer, I need a shidduch for my daughter. He walks him into the Beis Medrash, and it's packed like this, 400 plus people, and he sees the boy in the corner is like blitzing away. He says to Reb Eliezer Telzer, who is that? He wants him as a shidduch for his daughter. Reb Eliezer Telzer says, that's my ben Yochid. To get the Rosh Hashiva's ben Yochid, that's like a big deal. A few minutes later, he sees another bocher that everybody seems to be surrounding. They like his analytical mind. He says to Reb Eliezer Telzer, and who's that? He says to the wealthy man who's looking for a shidduch for his daughter, that's my ben Yochid. And this goes on about 4 times. Finally, the wealthy man in exasperation turns to Reb Eliezer Telzer and said, by each of the 3, 4 you said it's your only son, your ben Yochid, he looks at the Gvir and says, what don't you get? Ich hab 400 Talmidim, I have 400 Talmidim, and I have 400 Bnei Yechidim. That was Rabbi Goldenberg. That's it. And that might be why when Moshe Rabbeinu tells you he has 2 children, Gershon and Eliezer, it says Shem Echad Gershon, Shem Echad Eliezer. Shouldn't it say the first and the second? No. Because true chinuch is that everybody's an Echad. If you view every child as an Echad, you'll take pictures of him on Purim and make sure they're blown up and given to the family. Someone who views every child as an Echad will go over to you in shul. Sometimes in shul, it might be the most convenient time to walk away from a Talmud. Like it's my only few free minutes. Can I be on my own? But what does Rabbi Goldenberg want? I can help you out. I'm going to seek you out. Those few free minutes, I'm going to make even better. He can call a Talmud and say, I want to create an innovative program. You want to help me out? And it's why the angel, even in the last year of his life, is able to send 95 emails. That means 95 different nights. The remaining 100 nights, or however many nights of school there are, was made up of phone calls and telling the substitute, don't miss a night. Our Rabbi Goldenberg, that's in thousands of us, set the foundation for our life. It's that simple. He was our Malach Hashem Tzivakos. He was an angel. An angel is willing to set aside their own agenda and make every Talmud their Echad. Like everybody knows that's what he did. This is my Ben Yachid, and this is my Ben Yachid, and this is my Ben Yachid. He had thousands of Bnei Yechidim. Maybe when Hashem takes away your Malach before the 9 days, it's not equal to losing the Beis HaMikdash. It's Yosser Koisha Misreifas Beis Elokeinu. It's worse than. That's a quote from the Medrash in Eicha. There aren't any proper words that I could say to Mrs. Goldenberg and to the children. We for sure have the deepest sense of Hakaras HaTov that you allowed Rabbi Goldenberg to put his foundation into thousands of us. Like we'll be changed forever realize that this was a malach who was a Rebbe who's today is being welcomed as a Hailech. Realize happening before the 9 days is worse than Sreifas Beis Elchonon, as I just quoted to you. And maybe we can le'ilui the neshama of Rabbi Goldenberg, view every one of our children and talmidim not as you're the first, you're the second, you're the third. Everybody's got to be a ben yachid, because his whole existence was every talmid was truly Rabbi Goldenberg's ben yachid. And be'ezras Hashem, Rabbi Goldenberg as a mahalach should go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask the Rebbeinu Shalaylam to put an end to the tsaras and the loss, and that with this misa of our tzaddik, our malach, he'll ask Hashem to rebuild Beis Elchonon, be'ezras Hashem.
We'll now hear from some of the children. First, I'd like to call upon Yerucham Goldenberg.
The Gemara in Baba Basra quotes a pasuk, "Umatzdike harabim, umatzdike harabim kachachamim olam vad." Those who do good for the many are like stars that shine forever. Elim lam de tinakos. Who is this talking about? These are the people that teach our children. All mechanechim are like stars, as the Gemara says. Because the Torah that they teach the children will last forever. But my father was an excellent star. This community will be forever lit by the light of his teaching. My father was known as being an excellent Rabbi. What was his greatness? Was it the way he taught the psukim? Was it the parsha sheets? All of that is true. But there was a time when I was his assistant for 1 year, and I thought that I saw the real answer to this question. Why does everyone think that Rabbi Goldenberg is such a great Rebbe? Every child was a treasure to him. He wanted every child to be great. He didn't just want every child to be great. He knew how to find the greatness. He knew how to find the greatness in each child. If somebody took a test and my father looked at the test, he didn't do so well. Maybe what a Rebbe would usually do is say, okay, well, he didn't do good on the test. That's not what Abba did. He would call the boy to him, and he would sit with him, and he would go over the questions that he got wrong. And he said, oh, you know what? I think he really knows them. He didn't want them to do bad on the test. If he thought they really could do better, he would make sure they did. There was one time when I was working in his class. There was one boy I remember, and my father told me about him. He used to talk to me about how the kids were doing. And he said, this boy, everyone all the other teachers, they think he's a poor student. I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but what his issues were, why he wasn't a good student. But my father said to me, I don't think that's true. I think this boy is actually very smart. So he worked with him. He was able to work with this boy and focus on the strengths that he had. In not so long, the student was thriving in his class, something that had never happened with this boy before in anyone else's class. I used to help my father look over the homework sheets. And one day I looked at this boy's homework sheet, and I saw a note from this boy's parents. And it said, Rabbi Goldenberg, we talk about you all the time in our house. You are so much a part of our lives. It wasn't just that student. That Abba was part of his life, of his family and his life. There were so many other students just like that. He was able to find the greatness in every child. That's what the Gemara means when it says Matzdike Harabim. Matzdike Harabim kachavim la'olam vad. Elam elamdi tinokos. That light will last forever. Most Levayas have a row of Avelim in the front, and everyone else in the back is a guest. But this Levaya is different. I look in front of me, and I see that everyone here is Avelim, because my father was part of everyone's family, just like this boy. Which parent gets a phone call from his Rebbe, and he says, I think your son's not getting enough sleep. Maybe he needs to go to sleep earlier. Or maybe he doesn't have enough snacks today. You don't think you're sending enough snacks. Well, I got a phone call like that. It wasn't a phone call, he told me. Many other people did. My sons had their Saba as a Rabbi. My father loved so much teaching his grandchildren. And all my children and my nephews, they loved having him as a Rabbi. My son Aaron had his Saba as his Rebbe in the beginning of this year. Abba had to stop teaching his class as a result of his illness. He felt so bad that he couldn't teach my son. He so much wanted to teach him. He felt so bad that he said to me not so long ago, he said, I want to learn with Aaron. I want to learn with him every day of the summer to make up for that. I couldn't teach him this year. It didn't happen so many times because he was so sick, but he did learn with him a little bit. It meant so much to Aaron. It meant so much to Abba. At the Shabbos table, at my parents' Shabbos table, all our families used to come for lunch, to come for the Shabbos Suda. All the kids would gather around my father, and he would ask them Parsha questions every single week. It was so beautiful. All the kids loved it. 2 Shabbosim ago, my father asked the kids the Parsha questions like usual, even though he wasn't feeling so good. That was the day before he was admitted to the hospital. Even this year's 5th grade graduates, many of them spoke about what they remembered about Torah Semes. What they remembered about Torah Semes was how they loved watching Rabbi Goldenberg say the Parsha. Abba's Pesach Sederim were an event focused on the children. All the children would sit around him as he discussed the Haggadah with them. When my son Usher was in 1st grade, when he was 6 years old, he sat next to my father the entire Seder. From the time they started Kaddish Orchatz until Chad Gadya, he was wide awake, sitting next to him. He even raised his hand every time he had a question. I have this memory of my childhood. I was with my father in Shul, I believe it was in Young Israel, and somebody comes over to me, and he says to me, I want to tell you something. Your father is a big tzaddik. And the reason why I remember this so well is because it made no sense to me. I couldn't understand it where I was standing. And I said to myself, what? My father a tzaddik? I don't understand. He's just a regular Jew. He's a regular person. After all, that's what my father told me. He never considered himself anything special. It was only when I got older that I found out why my father was so great and how right that person was. Even as a classroom Rebbe, he was a leader in chinuch. He was a leader in Derech Eretz and in Midos Tovos. I always think of Abba. He's always an example to me for my life challenges, nisyonos. Whenever there's a challenge, I think to myself, what would Abba do in this situation? He would never do anything even remotely dishonest. He would never look at anything remotely inappropriate. He would never say anything to hurt anyone. He always had a kind word to say. Abba always wanted to do everything exactly according to halacha. Even in the hospital when his strength was slipping away, he sought the advice of poskim to make sure everything was done according to halacha. Abba would never miss a minyan. The last time he got out of the hospital, he went to shul soon after, even though he could barely walk. But Abba didn't grow up with all of this. He didn't have the great education that he gave us. My father told me that from the little he learned as a child, he knew that he wanted more Yiddishkeit in his life. But there was nothing in Pensacola, Florida. There were no yeshivas, there were no kiruv organizations. He still put on tefillin every day from his bar mitzvah, from the time he was bar mitzvah. He didn't really know what else it meant, what he should do to be a frum Jew. Eventually he found his way to Eretz Yisrael, where he was finally able to find meaning in life. It was 1967, and there was a war going on that threatened the existence of the country. But he was more concerned about learning about Yiddishkeit, and that's what he was there for. He had found what he was looking for, what he was always looking for. Eventually he made his way to Yeshiva University and then to Chavetz Chaim. He built a family of B'nai Torah and pursued a dream of chinuch. Ima was so devoted to everything Abba did, and he couldn't have done it without her. Abba and Ima's life was completely devoted to family and teaching. Nothing else really mattered much to them. Even when he was sick, he did everything he could to come in and teach. He opened the Arrowsmith program to help the children who were falling behind. He raised all the money himself. How did he do it? He wasn't a fundraiser. But he wanted to help the children. So he did it. We never really went on vacations. For a few years, we used to drive to New York to visit family. That was the best vacation that we could have. Abba was always concerned about everyone in the family's well-being. When he had to make shidduchim calls, he was completely consumed with it. He would call every name on the list until he got the information that he wanted. When he answered the phone, he would pick up the phone and he would say, "What can I do for you?" That's not a usual way of answering the phone. Even in his last days in the hospital, he was asking about whatever issues that we had and trying to help us. Abba started his life as a simple boy in a town that had little Yiddishkeit. He found Hashem by himself, just like Avram Avinu. He studied Torah and became a great leader of our community. My parents had many nisyonos, and together they passed them all. Despite everything, they always had a very positive outlook. His emunah and bitachon were clearly evident to all. Matzdikei harabim kakochavim, elu melamdei tinokos. This is what Abba was. This was his life. The light from Abba's teaching will always shine in our community and light up a dark world. May the day come when, as the Navi says, death is forever swallowed up. Ubila hamavas lanetzach, umacha Hashem dima me'al kapanim.
Peretz Goldenberg.
Abba was one of the greatest people that many of us will ever have the zchus to meet. To me, however, Abba was different. Abba was my world. Abba was everything to me. Abba was so attached to all of us. He would do absolutely anything for each and every one of us. When I was younger, Abba knew I needed extra attention. He used to take me fishing all by myself. We would go to all the best spots. Occasionally we would go on a deep-sea fishing boat. Each and every one of my siblings felt the same way. Whether it was bringing them to skate parks, to the shooting range, shopping, Abba made sure to spend personal time with each and every one of us. Whatever we enjoyed doing, Abba was ready to spend that time to be there for us and make us feel loved. Despite all the efforts Abba put in to help me grow, Abba always felt that he did a terrible job raising me. Abba, you were perfect. I never showed how much I appreciated all you've done for me while you were alive. Please be mochel me for all the challenges and difficulties I put you through. I always knew you loved me. You were a model parent. Abba had such humility. Whenever Abba had difficulty with anything, he would ask experts for advice. He never assumed he knew the answer. Despite having more experience raising children than most people will ever have, he was always asking what the best way to do things are. He would even ask me what I thought, even though I'm sure he knew better than me what the best way to deal with things are. Abba once asked me what I thought would be the best way to do Parsha with the grandchildren at the Shabbos table. And then he would follow diligently every week exactly the same routine, with the candy and the questions exactly like I suggested. Throughout my childhood, I never heard Abba yell at any of us. Abba and Mommy got along so well. They discussed everything and always managed to work things out perfectly. They did everything together. Abba never fought with Mommy. Disagreements were always discussed respectfully and worked out peacefully. Abba did not pressure us or anyone to do what he thought was right. He would give us the space we needed to make our own decisions and would do his best to steer us in the right direction. Abba was incredibly determined. Once he chose what he felt was the right thing, he stuck it out to the end. Even till almost his last days, Abba was determined to follow whatever diet he needed, whatever pills were necessary, did not cut any corners. As Yerucham said, Abba grew up in Pensacola, Florida, and knew nothing about Yiddishkeit. He was determined to find out what it meant to be Jewish. He researched, he asked people, and eventually got to Israel, and then to yeshiva, and became such a tremendous Talmid Chacham. Of course, he never thought of himself as a great person. He thought everyone else knew more than him. Just to add to a little bit of Yerucham's story, Abba was telling me when he was sitting shiva for his father, Grandpa Gus, about the time that he was on the kibbutz when the 6-Day War broke out. His mother wanted him to come home. It was dangerous. She even had a state senator call him up and tell him he needs to come home. Abba was firm. He said, "I don't care if I die here. I found Judaism and I'm not leaving." Abba was so committed to creating the best lessons for his students. He would usually wake up at 4:30 in the morning to work on preparing his sheets for school. Even though, of course, he had plenty of sheets on the same subject from previous years. But he wanted to update them to the latest educational methodology. Children on all levels were able to thrive in Abba's class. He cared about each and every one of them and knew exactly what each one was capable of and taught them on their level, with classes of 20 to 30 students at a time. Parents of students with special needs would often come to me and say that when their child was in Abba's class, he thrived. Somehow Abba was able to reach every child. We finally convinced Abba to publish his incredible Parsha sheets around 10 years ago. However, Abba never wanted us to print them until they were perfect, with all the sources and perfectly accurate. He was not ready to accept anything less than perfection for his students. Abba was always concerned about other people. Abba would often come over to someone a few days after Shabbos and apologize about something he said or did that may have hurt their feelings. Abba cared so much about everyone. New people in the community would always find a warm and caring place for a Shabbos meal and even a place to stay. Very often people would stay much longer than the rest of us would have liked, but Abba would never dream of asking anyone to leave. He wanted to help each and every Jew. Abba would secretly raise money for many people in the neighborhood who were going through difficulties. Abba was such an ish emes. Once when we were younger, thieves entered our backyard and stole 5 bicycles. Of course, they were junky bicycles anyway. But he filed an insurance claim and needed an affidavit from the bike shop on the value of the bikes. The guy in the bike shop suggested he can inflate the values by claiming they were newer, more expensive bikes. Abba, of course, would not hear of it and did not allow him to do it. During his last few days, many of us had the zechus to receive brachos from him and speak to him personally. He had a message for each of us and showed his caring and concern in so many small ways. He was more worried about our comfort than his own. I'm very lucky to have had the zechus to be so close to you, Abba, and I hope to be able to live up to your greatness. We miss you, Abba. You should be a Melit Yoshef for us and all of Klal Yisrael. Bila Mavsunitzach. Hashem Timemek. Amen.
Close family friend, close friend of Rabbi Goldenberg for many years, Chanech Rabbi Gedalia Glatt. There are a few seats here in the middle. If people want to come, move forward. Just on the men's side, there's a couple on the women's side as well.
I feel very inadequate. I was part of the Pensacola landscape. And I remember maybe I was in high school, maybe. So he came to the house. tried to convince me to go to yeshiva, but I wasn't ready to be convinced. But harbi drachim l'makom. I was on a plane to New York. A miracle happened. I happened to sit next to Mrs. Goldenberg, Rabbi Goldenberg's mother. Of course, there are no coincidences. Hashkacha Nora. I was going for something else. I wasn't going to yeshiva. She gave me her son's telephone number. We happened to be sitting next to each other on the plane. It's another nace. So she gave me his telephone number. Matters transpired. What I was doing I wasn't happy with. And so I had his telephone number in my wallet, so I called up Rabbi Goldenberg. So that Shabbos, they had me over. It was Rosh Chodesh Shvat, 1976. I still remember the apartment on Lubet Street. I stayed with him for a week. He was Mamish, my mentor. Mamish took me by the hand, and he didn't let go. He didn't let go. He's my mentor. He's my guide. He put me into my whole living situation. He found me my Rebbe, yeshiva, and then I just found out just today from Rabbi Counter. So Zayin Gezent Yibor L'Chaim. He said Rabbi Goldenberg told them all to take care of me. Rabbi Counter said Rabbi Goldenberg gave them all their instructions. And so they took care of me. So what? I said, then Baruch Hashem, Be'ezus Hashem, just continued on and on and on. I was implanted in the yeshiva, and I didn't leave. Didn't want to leave. So I was thinking yesterday, when I walked, and I was standing by Rabbi Goldenberg, Elchonon ben Gershon, and I said to him that the zechus of all of your Talmidim should be malavi you. Zechusim of all your Talmidim. And then I thought to myself, what about the zechus? Whatever small, minuscule thing I've been able to do myself, and she will have you also. Rabbi Shluchim L'Makom. You have an angel. Like Rabbi Shapiro said, you have an angel here. He was my angel also. Just a little bit of a vignette, a personal vignette, what I saw in him. The pasuk says, Michtam LeDavid Shomreini Keil Ki Chasisi Vach. Keep me, Hashem, for I've taken refuge in you. So Rashi asks, what is the meaning of a michtam? What's a michtam? And Rashi has various perushim. Well, one pirush he says, it means an atara, it means a crown. It means a crown. This is what David HaMelech used to repeat over and over and over again. It was his crown. What was his crown? Shomreini kel ki chasisi bach. Protect me, Hashem, because I've taken refuge in you. Rabbi Goldenberg was a bastion of emunah, a bastion of strength, of bitachon. It exuded from him. You got chizuk from being near him. You could be yonik from his strength. The word that occurred to me as I was going to the hospital yesterday was anak. And anak, it means a giant. And here was a giant. How incredible. So soft-spoken, so gentle, so unassuming, and a giant in Avodas Hashem. That was his crown. His crown was seeking refuge in the Ribono Shel Olam. And what a tremendous influence he had. He can't be Messiah on all of his Talmidim. He was exacting, as has already been said. He was exacting himself. You couldn't be vague with Rabbi Goldenberg. You couldn't be ambiguous with Rabbi Goldenberg. If it's anything to do with Avodas Hashem, it had to be clear. That was his. It was a foundation, a fundamental feature of his whole being was clarity. Just as much as you would be able to be medactic in a verb with his avav and it changes from future tense to past tense. There's no suffix whether it changes it from future to past. It's clear. His whole avodah was clear. What does the Ribono Shel Olam want of me? And if it's not clear, then he wanted it to be clear until it was clear. Because that's all that he wanted. He just wanted avodas Hashem. That's our matorah. That's our goal. Anu avdei d'Kodesh Brichu. I am an eved of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he took that literally. And it was his joy. And it was zechus. We had a child at our home this year. Had a family over. It was Parshas Tazria Metzora. So he asked the child to say something from the Parsha. I was amazed. The child opened up his voice. He started to say, and Yedias, your knowledge in Parshas Tazria Metzora is not an easy Parsha. So at first I was amazed. Who is this boy's Rebbe? And then I heard Rabbi Goldenberg's voice in the child. I heard the way the child was expressing himself. That was Rabbi Goldenberg. It was engaging. He was enjoying. The child was picturing himself as if he's watching the whole situation. It's a difficult thing. It's ras and colors but the child was into it and he was watching it. Because that's the way the Rabbi Goldenberg gave over his Torah. It was clear, but it was fun, and it was real. It wasn't archaic. It was real. This is real life. The child is there. The child is watching it himself. What a phenomenal zechus the children had. I saw also, we were there, I saw the family gathered around the Shabbos afternoon table too. And watching as Rabbi Goldenberg would ask the questions, and give the candy, and what a wonderful thing that was. He understood the magnificence of his role as a Rebbe, but he took no self-glory for it. All he wanted, as has been said, is the welfare of his precious students. This last year, he thrilled at the opportunity to be able to teach in the afternoons. He loved it because that was the most precious thing to him. And then at the end of the year, when his condition worsened and he was understood that he wouldn't be able to continue next year, he was thrilled. Try to imagine. He was so joyful over the fact that they found a worthy, fine replacement, as if anybody could replace Rabbi Goldenberg. But a wonderful, wonderful teacher to take over, that the children would receive the instruction that they needed. No remorse, no self bringing himself down. It was just the children will have what they needed. And his desire was maybe he would have the opportunity to take those struggling students and come into the school and deal with them on a one-on-one basis and give them what they needed. And that was a great joy for him, the prospect of doing that. He was medactic with himself as a Rebbe. Whenever there was a workshop, he would ask questions. Because he wanted to be a better Rebbe. He was already, many years ago, he was voted, he got the award for the excellence in teaching, and he was such a mumcha, such an expert. But that didn't matter. He wanted more and more and better, and he wanted to excel. Lo ira ra, gam ki elech begeitz al moves lo ira ra. I mean, when he first came down with his illness, there was no fear at all. Gam ki elech begeitz al moves lo ira ra. And he was makabel upon himself. What does the Rabboni Shalom want? Whatever he wants, that's what will be. And at every moment, miraculous things that happened during the course of his illness, and he and Tibor L'chaim, Mrs. Goldenberg, would see the Yad Hashem, and derive such strength from that. And we derive strength from that as well. I feel, as has been said, like we're at the end of an era. There's a godel in chinuch, a godel in ahava, a godel in yira, a godel in avodas Hashem. As unassuming as he was, it was the tip of the iceberg. I really, really feel we don't know who he was. I really feel that. The tip of the iceberg. He was a giant. He was an anak in his avodas Hashem. And we're bereft. The whole community is bereft. And they're precious, precious children who are poised to enter the sacred halls of this school. And chaval and woe is us that they won't be zoch to have Rabbi Goldenberg. But as has been said, it's like inside of us. And all of the lessons that we all have absorbed from him, a part of us. And Hashem should help us pick up the slack. Should strive to realize the preciousness of our children and to be devoted to every single one of them. And we all will be an everlasting monument. Rabbi Goldenberg, Elchonon ben Gershom, I ask Mechila personally, anything throughout the years that I didn't give the covet I should have, or I did something I shouldn't have. It may be a Melitz Yosher for all. Maybe Hashem needs him at this critical time. Hashem needs this anak in Shemayim to daven for Klal Yisrael, to daven for the family. We're at a very, who knows what time we're standing on right now. Kadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe he just needs him. He needs him. He just needs him in heaven. Tehei nishmaso tzrura b'tzrura chayim.
Came special from New York today, the founding Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Toras Chaim Toras Emes, Rabbi Ben Zion Chait.
Most people, when they travel, don't print these. They use their phone. said to myself this morning, I'm going to print it because I need to write notes. Notes of a lifetime on a little piece of paper. Notes of a symphony that will never, ever cease to be playing in our hearts and our souls. Rabbi Goldenberg, forgive me for saying this, was not the Rebbe of our children. He was our Rebbe. He taught us what being a Rebbe is. He taught us what being a parent is. He taught us what being a husband is. He taught us what being a neighbor is. He taught us what being a mensch is. He taught us what it means to live a life of passion. Man that lived a life as a mission. He knew his mission. It was clear from his infancy. He understood it, as Rabbi Lehrfeld said. He lived it, he loved it, as Rabbi Shapiro said. I want to share with you two stories and two comments. After the destruction of a significant portion of the yeshiva of Hebron, one of the students of the yeshiva comes over to Rabbi Yehuda Leib Chasman, and he says, Rebbe, I lost everything. What'd you lose? I lost my roommate. Rabbi Goldenberg was my roommate. In Eretz Yisrael, together with Rabbi Yehuda Cheplowitz, Shalom and be well, we schlepped in all the way from Milwaukee. On Burn Street, memories. I lost my charusa. I lost everything. So Rabbi Yehuda Leib Chasman says to him, put a piece of paper and write down what it is you did in your life that gives you the schus of having survived that terrible, tragic event on that Friday night in Hebron so many years ago. 24 hours comes and goes. Rabbi Yehuda Leib sits down, exactly on time, and he looks at the Talmud and he says, well, he says, Rebbe, I have nothing to put on this piece of paper. I don't know what I did. I didn't do anything worthy of having been saved from that terrible tragedy. I should have been taken and not them. And Rabbi Yehuda Leib says to him, that's the right answer. We really don't know what schusim we do and don't have. But I want you to figure out what it is you live for. What's your mission in life? What's your purpose in life? And then you'll understand why you have to be here. Rabbi Elchonon ben Gershon knew that in his very essence. He knew it in his very soul. He lived it, he breathed it. He wasn't dancing for the children, he was dancing for Torah. And the kids saw it. He was that powerhouse, the Anak, as Rabbi Glatt said, who came to life because he understood with clarity, with very clear focus, what his mission is and will continue to be. I saw relatively recently something special. I was visiting Miami. It wasn't even that cold in New York yet. I was here for some reason. Rabbi Bauman will remind me because I can't remember my comings and goings. Believe me, I don't come here to raise money. I came here to raise some consciousness of something. And I knew Rabbi Elchonon was very sick. I see him with his little briefcase, walking into the school with the biggest, beautiful smile on his face. I said, Rabbi Elchonon, how are you feeling? He said, I had this procedure. I feel so much better. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so good to me. Where are you going? He says, Rabbi Goldenberg is sick. So they hired a Rebbe to teach Torah for Rabbi Goldenberg. But that Rebbe is sick. So they asked me to sub for the Rebbe who's too sick to teach Rabbi Goldenberg. Then he walks by the gates, and this first grade class is coming back from recess. Do you ever have a moment in your life where you really wanted to do something, you knew it was wrong? I really, really wanted to take out my camera and take a picture of this, and I didn't. I think you'll think I made a mistake. I think I did the right thing. It was too precious to take a picture. The kids hadn't seen him in 2 months, 3 months. They see him coming. They're coming back from recess. One after the other, Rebbe, 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 jumping like ecstatic. And then they lined up, each and every one of them, to hug him and kiss him. To hug him and kiss him. That's knowing and understanding who you are and what your purpose is and what every Talmud is, what every relationship, what every kiss, what every word of Torah is. Precious, distinct, unique. I didn't take a picture of it, but it's etched in my being forever. Now I'm going to tell you something that I don't think anybody in this room knows, except maybe Alan Jacob. Because he remembers the good old days when we didn't have money. And we couldn't afford this building that you're sitting in today. And we put a deposit down on this building. $300,000 in those days, 1994 was a lot of money. And it went hard. We couldn't. There was no recourse. We had to get a mortgage, and no one wanted to give us a mortgage. Can you imagine that? Nobody. First bank, second bank. One bank says to me, I don't see prophets. Where do you keep the prophets? I said, look in the bookshelves. Isaiah, Joshua. They didn't get it. You keep the prophets. Finally, a good friend of ours by the name of Judah Hertz says, Rabbi Chet, last recourse. There's a gentleman at Home Savings Bank in Hollywood. His name is Tom Wall. Call him up. He's a seat-of-the-pants banker. That was before the banking business collapsed. He likes you, he'll give you a loan. He doesn't like you, he'll lend you money, and you'll be stuck. You'll lose the $300,000 and the building. Like us. I do sing and dance. This guy's a numbers guy. He looks at numbers. He looks at the tuitions. He says, you have receivables here? Imagine how long ago this was. Of $5,000 a year for a student to go to school? That's insane. Why shouldn't they go to public school and get it for free? I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared to answer that. I didn't know what to answer. I said to him, Tom, let's go take a walk around the school. We were still in our old building in Carlisle. And I said, come, let's go into the classroom. I didn't know what to do. My mamish didn't know what to do. I walk him into Rabbi Goldenberg's first grade classroom. Tom Wall sees the kids all stand up. He thought it was for him. Great. I'm not as honest as him. They stand up. He's impressed. Take out the flashcards. Olive, and the kids are jumping out of their seats. trying to answer the questions. He's standing. His back is to me. I don't see his face. After 3 minutes of the I think maybe he needs some aspirin or something. I tap him on the shoulder, say, Tom, you want to go? He goes, I don't see his face. He shakes, no. 3 more minutes, I said, Tom, you want to go? And he turns around, and there's flowing tears coming out of his face. This is a crusty old, now I don't think he's old anymore, banker. I said, Tom, what's the matter? He says, Rabbi Chait, I never saw anything so beautiful in my life. If my children had what your children have, they'd all be Jewish today. None of them stayed Jewish. These children will be Jewish forever because they see something special. You got your loan. Rabbi Goldenberg was able to show, even a person like that, the beauty of Torah, the magnificence and the majesty, the dynamism of Torah. He lived it, he exuded it. When Johnny Shames is learning Chumash, he thinks about those stick figures. They stick with him because that's living Torah. Those living examples, and it'll be going like that forever, and your children will have it. Be'ezer Hashem Yisborach. I have to ask Mechila. I think we all have to ask Mechila. Because having such greatness in our presence compelled us to do more. To respect him more, which he wouldn't have liked. To treat him better, which he wouldn't have liked. To pay him on time, that he would have liked. But we didn't. And we couldn't show him how much we loved him. The children were able to do that. And it was his chiyus, even in his worst hours, and you know that. And he'll live forever from that. That was his medicine. There was no other medicine for him. He lived it. He breathed it. He gave him chizuk. And he gave us chizuk. Tehei nishmasot tzrur b'tzror ha'chaim is a legacy that will continue in each and every one of us, in each and every one of you, because he left us that legacy, which is the Malamed, is to do for others, to give to others, to care for others. And in that way, Rabbi Elchonon Goldenberg will never die. Teich from Nishmasot Tzrur B'Tzror Chaim.
I also have a plane ticket, but I didn't write on it. There was only one attempt in the 29 years that Rabbi Goldenberg was here when the yeshiva and the community tried to show him proper kavod, to recognize him. It was 13 years ago at our 17th annual dinner. Somehow he arranged it. I don't think he arranged it, but he was actually sitting shiva for his father and did not attend that dinner. So it's not until today, unfortunately, in this circumstance, that we are allowed to speak our hearts and speak our minds about what Elchonon ben Gershon means to each one of us, to us as a yeshiva and to us as a kehila. On a personal note, and I don't think anyone here knows about this, I actually met Rabbi Goldenberg backstage at a Rabbi's Sons concert in September 1967. He was accompanying the Rabbi's Sons on his bongos. I was actually managing the backstage for the shul where the concert was taking place. And I didn't know who he was, but I was immediately attracted to this young man. He was very calm, he was very focused, and he was very approachable. And our relationship started not very strong. We both had first names that we have since placed elsewhere. But it was the beginning of a relationship that has lasted a lifetime. The beginning of Parshas Bahaloscha, famous Rashi asks, why does the term Bahaloscha es haneros, why is it used instead of Bahadlikcha es haneros? Instead of kindling the neros, why is it when you raise up the neros? And Rashi answers that question, and he said, because the ultimate purpose of the lights in the Beis HaMikdash are that the flames shall go up by themselves. And therefore we use the term Bahaloscha, to go up. This was Rabbi Goldenberg's mission in life. Through his love for his students, his love for Torah, and his masterful ability to impart skills and the Torah material, he reached generations of children and created independent learners. As we've heard many times this afternoon, that part of him that has entered into the neshamos of our children and many of us and will last forever. There's something very unique about Rabbi Goldenberg and the way he did what he did. Later on in Parshas Baloscha, it tells us, Al pi Hashem yachnu v'al pi Hashem yisa'u, when the Jewish people encamped in the desert of Sinai, so everything was according to Hashem's command. They encamped, they traveled. The Aruch Chaim brings down an interesting, not so commonly heard pshat based on Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. He said that the Klal Yisrael, very much, the words are, he says, Hagam v'haya lahem ratzon. They wanted to stop, they wanted to travel, but nevertheless, lahaya osam hadavar ela litzad hayos hadavar ma'amaro yisbarach. They enjoyed what they were doing. They appreciated the time to camp, the time to travel, but their motivation at the core of their being was to do the will of Hashem. Rabbi Goldenberg loved what he did. He loved the children, he loved his colleagues, he loved the parents, he loved the yeshiva. But it was his focus on doing the Ratzon Hashem, Hashem's will, that drove him. It drove him to not sleep on Thursday nights for the first year or two that he was here, because he was working on those soon-to-become famous Parsha sheets. And, as was mentioned, needed to be perfect. It was this desire to do Ratzon Hashem that drove him year in and year out to perfect every single word that came out of his mouth. If you had the zechus ever to watch him in his classroom, it was as if every single word had been scripted, but not dry reading from it, prepared text, but it was scripted in his heart, and it came out. He did not waste a second. He did not waste a word. This does not come by itself. This is the result of tremendous, tremendous effort and tremendous work over the years. It was this desire to do Ratzon Hashem that energized him to perpetually look to improve. He was a master teacher from day one, but he was constantly reinventing himself. Whether it was the time that we introduced Project Derech, and he worked for hours to formulate the exact way that teachers could introduce and to reinforce the way that it was taught to the children. Despite his tremendous hatzlacha in teaching children how to read Hebrew, he was constantly looking for new methodologies. He was constantly looking for new ways to reach every single student. We introduced the responsive classroom approach, which was an entire upending of a lifetime of how to speak in the classroom and how to conduct affairs. With all the years of experience, you would think that, okay, take the attitude that this too will pass. But no, he embraced it, and he developed himself, and he helped the others, helped the rest of the staff to work on it and to perfect it. Sitting on the floor during circle, having a circle time, having a sharing time, having greeting time, this was his essence. Didn't matter how many years he's been doing it, how many years he has under his belt, how many accolades were coming his way, which he never listened to anyway. It was always a better way to do it. One would think that someone in his upper 60s would decide that new technology was not necessary for him to learn. But as we heard before, he became a master at emailing. He used it constantly, and he was very interested and tried very hard to develop himself in technological skills. And this desire to do Ratzon Hashem had him out on the ball field. Even this past year, in his weakened state, playing ball with his Talmidim, showing them another manifestation of his love and his concern for them. He accepted and even solicited ideas from colleagues. Not only colleagues, but younger colleagues. And not just younger colleagues, but even colleagues who used to be his own students a few decades ago. He would seek out their new ideas and their suggestions for how he could better reach his students. As Rabbi Chait mentioned, the decision had to be made not that long ago that Rabbi Goldenberg could not continue in teaching the regular classroom. So we spoke about developing a Kriya program that he would be able to work with children individually. And he's been pressing me, let's have a meeting, let's discuss it. And we were supposed to have a meeting later this week. When Miriam Hanaviah was struck with tzaras, with the leprosy, as a result of the Lashon Hara, Moshe Rabbeinu davened for her, Kel na rafa na Allah. And the Farshim point out that Moshe Rabbeinu said a very short tefillah, 5 words, Kel na rafa na Allah. Hashem, please heal her. Why did he do that? Rashi says, because he felt that the Jewish people might be pained at the fact that for his own sister, he's going to have a long tefillah. But for others, maybe not. But it was his sister, so why? Why should it bother him? It was his sister, he was entitled to it. But that's not how a Manhag Yisrael, that's not how a true leader acts. A true leader is as concerned for every member of Klal Yisrael as they are for their own immediate family. And I think we all benefited from that. And we've heard from the family that they didn't suffer, but we definitely were a family. We were treated by family by Rabbi Goldenberg. Elchonon ben Gershon was concerned about every single person. If there was an issue in the community that he became aware of, we had to do something about it. He came to us and let's talk about it. Let's find somebody. Let's find some solution. How can this be? This was his concern. This was a true student, a disciple of Moshe Rabbeinu. As was mentioned, the Aerosmith program, which came about solely because of his Mesiras Nefesh with the help of a few people. His tenacity, despite his quiet nature, his tenacity to take care of an issue that was plaguing the community. The children needed this help, and he left no stone unturned. There was nobody he was afraid to approach. There was no approach that he was afraid to take. And the program became a reality. After a few years, we realized that Yeshiva Day School is not the best place for this program, despite the quality of that program. Now we have Kanai Nahara, we have a resource room in the school. It's a direct result of Rabbi Goldenberg's efforts, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of children who are benefiting from it. For reasons that we will never grasp and we will never be able to understand, it's Hashem's will. It is Hashem's will that his love and his skill and his masterful expertise in the area of chinuch will no longer be offered to our children or to anyone else. And all we can do is accept the gezerah from Shemayim and rededicate ourselves, whether we ourselves are teachers, whether we are parents, whether we are rabbis, or whether we are community members, that the responsibility to ensure the education of every single Jewish child is a responsibility that lies with us. And if we can take that lesson from Rabbi Goldenberg, then we will be truly honoring his memory and his lifetime of Mesiras Nefesh, and we will be zoche, as we hope that he is now close to the Kisei HaKavod, being able to whisper into Kaviyachal, into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ear, to bring the Geula now. Macha Hashem Dima Me'al Kolpanim. Hashem should wipe away the tears. Te'ei nafsho tzur b'tzur ha'chaim. I'd like to call upon a very close colleague and friend who's been here even longer than Rabbi Goldenberg, one of the pioneers in North Miami Beach community and in the yeshiva, to say the Kel Malay, Rabbi Chaim Mendel. Please come forward. Everyone, please rise.
El Moli Rachamim Shoichein Bameroimim Hametzeim Menuchon Choino Tachas Kanfei Hashchino Bimalois Kedoshim Utahirim כזוי הרקיע מזהירים אס נשמס רב אלחונן בן גרשון שלח לי עולמוי בעבור שכולנו נאספים לכבודו נודע לצדקו בעד גורס נשמוסוי בגן עדן תהי מנוחסוי לכן בעל רחמים יסתירהו בסייס כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים אס נשמוסוי אדוני הוא נחלוסוי וינוח בשלום על משכבוי ונאמר אמן.
At this time, I would like to ask on behalf of the family and all of us who are gathered here for Mechila, that Rabbi Elchonon ben Gershon should be mochel us for anything that we did that we should not have done, or anything that we failed to do that we should have done, for his kavod in his lifetime. V'achrim yisaso, v'tehi nafsho tzura b'tzor ha'chaim. I'd like to now ask Rabbi Yerucham Kopelman to step forward to give us instructions. Please remain another minute.
Family will be observing Shiva at the home of the Goldenbergs at 17610 Northeast 7th Place. Mincha will be at 8 o'clock. Shachris for the week will be at 7:30 a.m. Kvura will be now taking place at Mount Sinai Cemetery. We really need patience. We ask those who are not going to the cemetery, please don't even attempt to go to your cars. Let the procession be on its way first so we can get there at a reasonable time. We ask those who are going to the cemetery that once we escort the Aron to the hearse to go immediately to your cars. Put on your headlights, your high beams, and your flashers, and we will proceed with police escorts to the cemetery. We'll be going to the right to 163rd Street and to I-95.